They were the first hard rock band where women ran the show. And what a show it was.
So this ain't the end, I saw you again.
I'd never heard a woman sing the way that Ann Wilson sang. It just knocked me out.
They rocked as hard as anybody did.
But for sisters Ann and Nancy Wilson, rocking hard was never the problem. It was getting rock that took its toll.
The headline was, "It was only our first time." Of course, the meaning was we were lesbian lovers, you know, sister lesbian lovers.
We just didn't know that we were going to be in such a Shark Tank.
Some of the biggest dangers were inside the band, where a love triangle nearly tore heart apart.
Ooh, you better keep your love now, keep your love alive. It's a little bit like Fleetwood Mac, you know, because I was still living with Roger, but I found myself being attracted to the drummer, the band.
I was falling apart, and I just lost it. God, that was just the most difficult thing I've ever gone through.
It was a very incestuous, weird time, and had disaster written all over it.
But the weird times were just beginning. Ann and Nancy had to survive both band and romantic breakups, and somehow came out of the hard times bigger than ever.
What about love? Don't you want someone to care about you?
There was a week there where I think everything was #1, heart.
But then Ann found out that bigger isn't always better.
In the morning, there'd be this review that would say, "Oh, how tragic. In the place of the once svelte, raven-haired siren, there's now this red-headed monster."
How do we ever keep this secret?
Now, the first sisters of rock and roll, Ann and Nancy Wilson, take you behind the music.
Hey, baby, I'm talking to you. Stop yourself and listen.
Would you welcome, please, Heart?
They broke the mold. For the first 20 years of rock and roll, men were the brains and brawn of the music business. In 1976, Heart got added to the mix.
We still have time, we might still get by. Every time I think about it, I want to cry.
They say what's in a woman's soul.
They do it as good as any guy.
They were the first band that was led by women. The songs were written by women, and all decisions were made by Ann and Nancy.
They were not the typical kind of bash and strut male rock band. Women were not part of that club.
Ann and Nancy Wilson not only broke down the club's doors, they did it on their own terms.
Raw talent. Their beauty is nice, but their talent is where it's all at.
Kick it out. That's what they said.
We weren't going to be sold as cheesecake. We were going to be ourselves. And that was the beginning of all our problems, which manifest themselves every time with every label. You know, we always have trouble with the cheesecake thing.
How we look has never been what's been important to us anyway. Hello? It's about the effing music, you know.
Ever since I was a baby girl, wanted one thing most in this world. It was to keep my love alive.
But in many ways, Heart has always been about something deeper than music. It's been about blood and sisterhood.
That's an amazing dynamic to have the two of them get along and be able to work and live together and do so much together, and yet they're really different, and they're definitely yin and yang.
We have like an ESP that happens between us. It's almost like we don't have to even finish a sentence or even say anything sometimes. It's like, oh, I know what you're thinking. You know, it's DNA, it's chemical, but it's, yes, also magical, I think.
That magical chemistry started in childhood. Their dad, John, was in the Marines, and Ann and Nancy, along with older sister Lynn, followed their parents to military bases around the world.
Music was everything, and we lived in these strange and odd places, Panama, Taiwan, and there was no music as we knew it there for us, so we made our own. always.
The family settled in Seattle in the early 60s, and it was there in the spring of 1963 that Ann came down with mono and missed 3 months of school. To keep her from going stir-crazy, her mother bought her a cheap guitar, but it was Nancy who fell in love with it.
We had a family nickname for her, which was Whiz Fingers. She took over Ann's guitar in fairly short order and really sped ahead in her virtuosity. And there it was, she was a natural.
I just ate it up. I just ate it up. I couldn't stop playing. As a matter of fact, I brought the guitar in bed with me. You know, I slept with it. Literally, not real comfortable. But, you know, it was symbolic to me, even at the time. It was a romantic, symbolic thing. He was my first boyfriend.
But while 9-year-old Nancy could still revel in romantic symbolism, 13-year-old Ann was confronting her own much harsher reality.
There are several grandparents in the background who were obese. And when Ann was born, she was a 10-pound baby. She has those Wilson genes.
Hitting puberty, you know, where girls just naturally either become so self-confident that they're popular or they fall off the cliff of being totally ugly, totally unpopular. Everything's wrong with them, you know. And of course, I fell off the cliff.
Every mean name in the book flew at her, and I mean, Tanko and Tubbalard, and it scarred her. I mean, it would scar anybody to be singled out as undesirable, ugly, awful.
Ann's salvation was singing, and she and Nancy spent their teens performing at churches and neighborhood parties.
I was painfully shy, mostly owing from the fact that I stuttered really badly. And singing helped me open my mouth and utter a smooth, unbroken, unstuttering phrase for the first time in my life.
When Ann turned 18, she decided to make singing her life's work. She played with a number of Seattle bar bands until the day she answered a newspaper ad that changed not only the course of her life, but many other lives as well. An ad looking for a lead singer for a band called Heart.
It was just instant magic. It was really powerful, good vibe, really, you just knew something was electric there.
Everyone said, okay, well, everybody needed money, so I said, well, let's just start learning songs.
Heart was on their way. But just ahead, Ann and Nancy find that songs weren't the only things they needed to learn.
It was a takeoff on a tabloid advertisement, but when you looked at it in context with these two naked women, apparently, back to back, you think, oh, gay sisters.
And later, Ann finds that living large isn't for everyone.
My favorite female singers are probably Ann and Aretha Franklin, and I don't see people running around saying, gee, Aretha, you should lose a few pounds so like 14-year-old boys will like you.
When Behind the Music continues.